My name is Aurora Quinn, 20 years old and barely holding it together as a community college student in Seattle. People say the worst storms come without warning, but mine announced itself the day my father died of lung cancer. I was 15. David Quinn was a software engineer, quiet but steady, the kind of man who believed that hardship was life's way of testing your resolve. Pain, he once told me, is just the fire that tempers steel. I clung to that. Still do. But when he passed, the foundation beneath our family cracked wide open. My mother, Laura Bennett, collapsed in ways I didn't expect. Just 8 months after we buried him, she married James Carter, a venture capitalist with too much money and a Malibu mansion that smelled like disinfectant and disdain. There was no room for me there. She didn't say it with cruelty, just cold finality. "You'll stay with your aunt and uncle in Seattle," she said, like she was shipping off a package. And so I did. Maggie and Rob Reynolds took me in. They meant well. But nothing felt like home anymore. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Aunt Maggie's house in Capitol Hill looked like something out of a magazine, stately, polished, every lamp and picture frame perfectly in place. But it felt no different from a boutique hotel where I wasn't welcome. Beautiful, yes, but cold, impersonal. Like I was a guest overstaying her visit. She never said it outright, but the tension was constant. From the moment I moved in, I wasn't family, I was a burden. She made that clear the day she handed me an envelope with a typed invoice inside. Rent. At 16. While I was still in high school. "Everyone contributes," she said flatly, sipping from a crystal glass like she'd rehearsed the line in her head. My cousins, Ethan and Sophia, weren't much better. We used to play hide and seek in Grandma's yard, build pillow forts, whisper secrets at sleepovers. That was another life. Now at 18 and 19, they barely acknowledged me unless it was to laugh. Ethan called me charity case when he thought I couldn't hear. Sophia once posted a story on Instagram, a picture of her new Balenciaga bag with the caption, "Sorry, some of us weren't born poor." She knew I'd see it. That was the point. What hurt most wasn't the words, it was the shift. The way their eyes passed through me like I no longer existed. I wasn't Aurora, their cousin, their friend. I was just the one who couldn't afford college. The freeloader in the back room. Maggie kept raising the rent, first subtly, then blatantly. "Maintenance costs are rising," she'd say. "Property taxes in this neighborhood are no joke." As if that justified billing a grieving teenager like a tenant. As if grief came with a payment plan. I tried to argue once. She smiled in that clipped, saccharine way of hers. "If you can't handle adult responsibilities, maybe it's time you grow up." So I did the only thing I could. I started looking for work. I took on 2 jobs. By day, I was a barista at a crowded cafe that smelled like burnt espresso in desperation. The lines never stopped, the noise never eased, and I learned to make 6 drinks at once while smiling like it didn't drain the life out of me. Night, I clocked in as a cashier at a rundown convenience store, the kind with flickering lights and a bell that rang too loudly every time the door creaked open. The schedule was brutal. Most days, I ran on caffeine and sheer panic. I barely slept, barely breathed. But I clung to my grades like a life raft. If I could just keep them high enough, maybe, just maybe, I could land a scholarship. Something to get me out. Ethan and Sophia seemed to take some twisted joy in reminding me where I stood. They'd waltz into the convenience store with smug grins, knocking over cereal boxes or accidentally spilling drinks down the aisle. One night, I caught Sophia snapping a photo of me from behind the counter, my name tag crooked, apron stained. She posted it with the hashtag grocery girl. Caught on. At school, I became coffee girl. That's what they called me behind my back and eventually to my face. I'd find crumpled notes on my desk with mock drink orders or fake coupons for free therapy. They laughed as if it were all just a game. But every note chipped away at something quiet and sacred inside me. My mother barely checked in. Maybe once a month she'd send a dry, soulless message. Hope you're eating. Or don't forget to pay Aunt Maggie on time. Meanwhile, her Instagram painted a different story: sunsets in Santorini, champagne in Paris, all smiles with James. Not a single photo of Dad. Not one of me. It was as if she'd pressed delete on the life we had before. Sometimes I'd scroll through her feed late at night, watching the likes roll in, and wonder, had she really moved on or just rewritten the past to erase the parts that hurt? Either way, I was nowhere in it. Things got worse again. Aunt Maggie doubled the rent without warning. No warning, no apology. Just a folded sheet of paper left on the kitchen counter, with a new number circled in red ink. Starting next month, it read like it was nothing. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding, the cereal in my bowl turning to mush. I did the math a dozen times, but there was no scenario where it worked. Even with both jobs and every cent scraped together, I couldn't afford to stay. The truth sat heavy in my chest. I had to go. So I packed what I could into the back of my pickup, a rusted old truck with more history than horsepower, and left. No goodbye. No dramatic exit. Just me, the rain, and the silent understanding that I wasn't welcome there anymore. I started parking near the cafe where I worked during the day. That way, I could sneak into the bathroom when it was quiet and wash up. I'd brush my teeth at the sink, apply deodorant under my clothes, and hope no one noticed how fast I dried my hair under the hand dryer. The cafe's bathroom became my morning ritual, my mirror, my secret. Seattle winters are unforgiving. Cold doesn't just sting, it seeps into your bones. Rain fell like a curtain of pins, and the fog blanketed everything until the city felt like a ghost town. I wore 3 jackets at once, 2 pairs of socks, a beanie that smelled faintly of stale coffee. Tonight, I'd curl into myself in the back seat, wrapping a thin blanket around my knees and chest, trying to make my body smaller than the cold. I studied under streetlights, highlighters in my teeth, notes balanced on my knees. I washed my clothes in the employee changing room at the convenience store, using detergent packets I stole one at a time. I hung shirts to dry in the truck's back window, pretending it was normal, pretending I was normal. School, I smiled when people looked. I kept my head down. I survived. Until Ethan found out. I'm still not sure how. Maybe he followed me. Maybe someone saw me crawl into the truck one night and whispered it back to him. Either way, he showed up with his phone out, laughter already in his throat. "Smile for the camera, Aurora," he said through the cracked window, the lens pointed straight at me. He called it the Homeless Diaries. The video showed me sleeping in the truck, curled up in the back like a stray. In another clip, I was changing shirts in the dark, hunched over and trying to keep warm. He edited it with filters and music, mockumentary style, and passed it around to his rich kid friends like a joke. Spread faster than I could control. Students laughed in the hallways. "Hey, grocery girl," they'd snicker. "Need a ride home? Or just gonna roll into your driveway on 4 wheels?" Even the teachers looked at me differently. I could feel it in their eyes, the discomfort, the judgment they tried to hide behind soft voices. The worst part wasn't the shame. It was the fear. The fear that someone else would find me. That a stranger would walk past my truck in the middle of the night and do more than film. That I'd vanish without anyone even noticing I was gone. And then it happened. One bitter night, the kind where the air cuts your lungs just for trying to breathe, everything failed at once. truck battery died. I turned the key again and again until the clicking faded into silence. Then my phone died. No light, no heat, just the thick, unmoving cold. I sat in the dark, legs pressed to my chest, too numb to cry. I tried to think of warm things, my dad's laugh, his hands on the steering wheel, the summer we drove up the coast eating gas station snacks and telling ghost stories. But even those memories started to blur. My eyes closed. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was where it ended. Then, knock, knock. I jolted awake. Someone was tapping on the driver's side window. I squinted through the fogged glass. Uncle Rob. He didn't look angry, just tired. Sad, maybe. His face was red from the cold, and he held 2 cups of coffee, steam rising into the night. "Come on," he said gently. "You can't stay here." He led me a few blocks down to a narrow building I'd passed 1,000 times but never really seen. It was quiet, tucked between a bike shop and a bakery, with a dusty brass sign that read "Second Floor Offices." We climbed a flight of creaking stairs. The top was a small office, barely wider than a studio apartment. There was a couch, a heater, a kettle, a soft orange glow from a table lamp. "Sit," he said, handing me one of the coffees. "It's hot. Take your time." I took a sip. My fingers stung as they thawed. Coffee tasted burnt, but it was the best thing I'd had in days. Then he sat across from me and said something that changed everything. "I've been watching you," Rob said quietly. "From the cafe's security cameras. I own the place." I blinked. "What?" I kept it quiet. Didn't want family asking questions. "But I saw you every day, working hard, cleaning up messes, pretending not to be tired. Your dad would have been proud." I didn't speak. I couldn't. He leaned back, eyes distant. "Your father and I, we were both homeless once. Slept behind an auto repair shop in Tacoma. He got a job cleaning engine parts. I helped with oil changes. We saved everything. When he finally had enough, he bought me my first property. Said, 'Start here. Don't forget where we came from.' I never did." He looked at me, voice softer now. "Before he died, he made me promise something. Let her try. Let her fail. But if it ever gets too dark, be the light she can't see." I stared at him, chest aching. "Why now?" "Because tonight the light went out." I never expected grace to arrive in the form of an exhausted man holding cheap coffee and decades of buried loyalty. But Uncle Rob, quiet, steady, and until then distant, stepped into my darkness and didn't flinch. That alone felt like a kind of miracle. In the days that followed, he told me he was impressed. Not just by my grades, but by the way I kept showing up on time, exhausted, still working, still studying despite everything. He said most people in my situation would have quit, given in, vanished. "You didn't," he told me. "And that matters." Then he handed me a key. "A studio," he said simply. "It's small. It's upstairs. It's free. Your rent is effort. Keep working, keep learning, and finish school." First, I refused. I wasn't about to swap one kind of dependence for another. "I'm not a charity case," I said, swallowing pride like broken glass. But Rob shook his head. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is investment. Same thing your dad did for me years ago. He believed in me when no one else did. Now it's my turn." That silenced me. So I moved in. The studio apartment wasn't fancy, linoleum floors, a twin bed, a tiny kitchenette, but to me it was a palace. A space that was warm, safe, and mine. I cried the first night. Not from sadness, but from the strange relief of sleeping indoors, of locking a real door behind me. Rob didn't stop there. He started teaching me, really teaching me. Every night after work, he'd sit with me in the back of the cafe or at the office upstairs and walk me through the basics of real estate: how to read lease agreements, calculate ROI, understand zoning laws. He showed me how he managed properties, negotiated contracts, tracked finances. It wasn't just knowledge. It was empowerment. "I'm not giving you fish," he said. "I'm showing you how to catch them and how to own the pond." Then came the unraveling. It started with something so ordinary it almost seemed harmless: Ethan borrowing Aunt Maggie's iPad. He needed it for a school project, or so he said. She handed it over, too busy decorating for his upcoming 18th birthday party to notice, or maybe too confident to care. But Ethan's curiosity got the better of him, and he stumbled onto something that made his blood run cold: a string of encrypted messages between Maggie and James Carter, my stepfather. They weren't just friendly. They were lovers. Plotting. Scheming. Laughing. The messages told a story of betrayal so layered and brazen it felt like fiction. Together, Maggie and James had been siphoning money from one of Rob's shell companies, nearly $5 million, with plans to disappear to South America. But it didn't stop there. Then dug deeper, cross-referencing account numbers and dates. He discovered that the rent Maggie had been charging me, under the guise of maintenance and taxes, hadn't gone toward utilities or property expenses. Instead, it had been quietly funneled into an offshore account, along with funds from Ethan's and Sophia's college trust accounts. The betrayal wasn't just mine, it was theirs too. I remember the silence that fell between Ethan and me when we sat together in that cramped studio, scrolling through the evidence. All the cruelty, the mockery, the contempt, they melted away. In that moment, we weren't enemies. We were victims of the same machine. So we took it to Rob. He didn't get angry. He didn't panic. He simply called his attorney, then the FBI. And together they began collecting more evidence: bank records, surveillance, private investigator photos, quietly, methodically, like loading bullets into a chamber. Rob waited for the right moment to strike. That moment came at Ethan's 18th birthday party. It was a spectacle. Live band. Champagne towers. A 3-tier cake with gold leaf icing. Waiters in tuxedos and guests in silk. Maggie buzzed through the crowd like a socialite queen, orchestrating every detail with fake laughter and the practiced grace of someone trying too hard to convince the world she was clean. My mother arrived with James, dressed in a red gown, his arm looped through hers like a perfect accessory. They smiled for photos, kissed cheeks, sipped wine, pretended. But I knew. Ethan knew. Even Sophia, once a bystander, now knew what we were about to do. We kept our masks on. We mingled. We laughed. Beneath the surface, we were steel. At exactly 4 p.m., Rob's lawyer entered the venue with a leather briefcase and an unsettling calm. He didn't greet anyone. He simply walked to the front of the room, cleared his throat, and raised a hand. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but we have a matter of legal urgency to address." Everyone turned. Maggie froze mid-laugh. James blinked. Rob stepped forward, standing tall in his gray suit, arms folded. "This won't take long," he said. The lawyer opened the briefcase and began pulling out documents. One by one, crypted texts, wire transfers, signed contracts, photos taken by private investigators of Maggie and James at a lakeside cabin, kissing. More photos of them entering bank offices, forging paperwork. There was no denying it. Then came the sound of boots, heavy, unmistakable. The FBI entered. 2 agents moved quickly through the crowd, approaching Maggie and James with practiced precision. They each read from a warrant, then turned them around and handcuffed them. Gasps echoed. Wine glasses shattered. Someone screamed. My mother's face went pale. "What's happening?" she whispered. The answer hit her in waves. Her husband was a thief. her sister was his lover. And the money they'd used to build their fantasy life, including trips to Europe, had come from the life insurance policy meant for me and Dad. Yes, James had stolen the money Dad left behind. Every last cent. I watched her knees buckle, her hands trembling, mascara streaking as the truth hit harder than any slap. Maggie tried to speak, tried to deflect, to lie, to twist the story. It was James. He told me, he said it was just temporary. James laughed bitterly. Don't even. You were the one who suggested using the girls' tuition money. They argued, loud and desperate, as the agents led them away. But not once, not even for a second, did either of them turn to apologize to us. To me. To Ethan. To Sophia. Not for the rent. Not for the betrayal. Not for the years lost to their selfishness. We weren't their children. We were just obstacles. But in that moment, we stood taller than them. In the aftermath of it all, the arrests, the headlines, the whispered gossip in every hallway, my mother checked herself into a rehabilitation center. Not for substance abuse. For reality. She needed help. Help facing what she'd done, who she'd become, and what she'd allowed. The doctors called it a psychological restoration program, but to me it was a kind of reckoning. For the first time since my father died, she was forced to sit with the choices she had made. The love she abandoned. The daughter she left behind. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. I think, somewhere under the wreckage of grief and bad decisions, my mother had simply broken, and no one had stayed long enough to help her rebuild. As for Ethan and Sophia, everything changed. They moved into the studio apartment with me. It was cramped, 3 people sharing a space meant for one, but it didn't matter. We took turns sleeping on the couch, the floor, a blow-up mattress that deflated by morning. We fought about dishes, fought about laundry, and somehow laughed through all of it. Something unexpected happened in that tiny apartment. We became a family. The arrogance that used to drip from Ethan's voice had disappeared. The superiority in Sophia's eyes had softened. We were equals now, brought low by the truth, lifted by something stronger than wealth, purpose. Together, we started working at Uncle Rob's commercial complex, a sprawling maze of retail shops, co-working spaces, and renovated warehouses on the edge of downtown Seattle. It was real work, the kind that made you sweat and think and fail and try again. I discovered I had a head for numbers. Spreadsheets, projections, budgeting, I could see the moving pieces the way my father once did. Sophia, once obsessed with image, began to shine in client meetings. She knew how to speak to people, how to listen, how to sell a vision. And Ethan? He surprised us all. He could fix anything, elevators, plumbing systems, busted lighting panels. He had grease under his nails and a grin that finally seemed genuine. Every evening, after the complex closed and the last lights blinked out, Uncle Rob would sit us down for what he called the real lessons. He taught us how to manage a company, not just the operations, but the soul of it. How to treat employees. How to spot dishonest partners. How to protect each other. He spoke with quiet pride, but one night his voice broke just slightly. "I want you 3 to take over someday," he said. "Not because you're family, but because you've earned it." We didn't respond right away. We just looked at each other. 3 kids who had once been strangers, divided by ego, resentment, and secrets, now bound by something stronger than blood. We weren't the same people anymore. Maggie and James were still awaiting trial, buried beneath charges of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. Court froze their accounts. Press ripped them apart. And in a cruel twist of irony, the empire they tried to steal ended up in the hands of the very kids they'd tried to destroy. But we didn't gloat. We didn't throw parties or pop champagne. We worked. We rebuilt. Every morning I woke up before the sun, opened my laptop, and tracked the books. Sophia handled emails and vendor calls. Ethan rotated between maintenance tasks and local classes in electrical engineering. We took turns cooking ramen on a single stove burner and falling asleep to the sound of rain tapping on the window. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Uncle Rob kept mentoring us step by step. He let us shadow him in board meetings, invited us into legal negotiations, explained everything, never dumbing it down. He respected our potential the way my father once respected his. And in that, I finally understood something my dad used to say. Resilience doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just choosing to wake up and try again when everything tells you not to. I had lost my father. I had lost my home. I had been mocked, discarded, made invisible. But I had found something greater. In the ashes of what had once been a broken family, we built a new one, not perfect, but real. Held together not by bloodlines or expectations, but by choice, by effort, by truth. Ethan and Sophia weren't just cousins anymore. They were my siblings in every sense that mattered. We carried groceries together, argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash, covered for each other at work when someone had a bad day. We saw each other now, not through filters or old assumptions, but through the lens of shared survival. And me? I no longer saw myself as the girl who lived in a truck. I was Aurora Quinn, daughter of David Quinn, student worker builder, someone who had faced the storm and chosen to stand anyway. My father used to dream of a life where I was free to become who I wanted, no matter how hard the path. He never got to see me reach it, but somehow I think he knew. Sometimes life breaks you down just to rebuild you stronger. I used to think survival meant working myself to the bone, hiding my pain behind coffee stains and late-night shifts. But when everything fell apart, when the betrayal came from those I trusted most, I realized survival isn't just about getting by. It's about choosing who you become in the face of it all. Lesson 1. Your circumstances don't define your worth. Living in a car, wearing a faded uniform, and being laughed at by classmates could have made me bitter. But I learned that resilience isn't flashy. It's quiet. It's waking up each day and doing your best even when no one claps for you. What I had didn't matter as much as who I was becoming. Lesson 2. Real family isn't always blood. After what Maggie and my own mother did, you'd think I'd stop trusting anyone. But it was Ethan and Sophia, once just step-siblings, who showed up for me. We grew into a team not by shared DNA, but by shared struggle and honesty. Family can be chosen, built from care, loyalty, and late-night conversations in a tiny kitchen. Lesson 3. Kindness can change your life. Uncle Rob didn't owe me anything. I wasn't his responsibility. But he saw potential where others saw a girl in a cheap apron. His belief in me planted a seed I didn't know was there. One act of kindness can alter someone's entire path. We never know how far our encouragement can carry someone. Lesson 4. Facing the truth is hard but necessary. It hurt to uncover the lies. The money stolen. The manipulation. The fact that the people who were supposed to protect me used me. But truth, even when brutal, clears the way for healing. Avoiding it only keeps us stuck in someone else's game. Lesson 5. You're allowed to start over on your terms. I used to think life handed you one script, and if it got ruined, that was it. But I learned that every ending holds the bones of a new beginning. We built something from the ashes, me, Ethan, Sophia, and it's messy, imperfect, but it's ours. So if you're in a dark season, remember this. The people who betray you don't get to define you. The scars you carry are proof you're still here, still trying. And sometimes the most beautiful futures rise from the most broken pasts. If this story moved you, please like, share, or subscribe. Somewhere out there, someone needs to hear this today.